Get your copy of The Royal Mindset by using the link below.
Hello and welcome back to another video. This is the fourth video in the Royal Mindset series, and today's chapter is called the Royal Standard. So the Royal Standard is basically this idea where I have considered, as discussed in the last video, that it's useful to have a perfect role model to be able to emulate in all situations at any point in time. Kind of the idea of being able to think, what would this perfect person do in this situation? What is the best way to solve this challenge? What is the best method to overcome this obstacle? And the character that I've created in the book is called the Good King, simply because of the connections that have been made in the book between how our lives are better than kings, and then how would our lives look if we actually were, I suppose, this full-rounded individual. And this individual is called the Good King in this case because a king is a leader of a people. He needs to be able to be competent in order to be respected, but also so that people actually like him, and he actually is able to provide well for everybody without being kind of a dictator and being, I suppose, a bad person in general. So a person who has so much power needs to be almost better than anybody else, because with so much power comes an awful lot of responsibility. And I suppose for all of us, we kind of go through similar phases in life. We all kind of perhaps begin in life with responsibility only over ourselves and maybe of the people around us. But once we start our own families, we really become we attain a position of power within our family where we need to be responsible. I need to be somewhat like this good king in the book that I describe. So this idea of the royal standard is just this idea that everything can be done at a high level, efficiently, in a way that kind of, I suppose, benefits everyone in society, benefits yourself, and this idea that there's not really a need for anyone to compromise badly, simply because it is possible to find a solution. And if you use your creativity and think about things long enough, there normally always is a solution that suits everyone. So this is kind of a social element of it, but then there's also personal standards, like standards in health, standards in just living, standards that you hold yourself to, your values, your morals. The book doesn't go too deeply into morals and values. I have a whole second book kind of planned for that called Traits of Good King, which I haven't really begun writing yet, but I have title ideas like basically just, it's a much more kind of value-based approach to this, whereas the Royal Mindset, it's a much more practical-based approach. And I think it's probably more beneficial for people who have practical, I suppose, practical ways of looking at life, and they want kind of a more practical approach, whereas the morals and principles are probably just as important, and I will hopefully finish that at some point. So the book itself, as previously explained, each chapter kind of explains how we can hit high standards in different parts of life, different regions. And yet, while all of the standards in this book aren't necessarily perfect, don't apply to everyone, the idea is, and the hope is, that it opens our minds to concepts and provides us motivation to not give up, to really go on and strive for, I suppose, high standards. So I then go on to describe the Good King. So I've just called him the Good King. I could have called him any sort of a name. It could have been a personal name. It could have been a broad name. In this case, the Good King makes sense because the king is the leader of a people. He has to be responsible. He can't really afford to be poor in any area if he really is to be the best king. And this is kind of like the best king imaginable. It's almost like a romanticized version. It's not really a real king because nobody's perfect. But imagine if this king did exist. If there was someone who was so wise and so knowing in all things, who was capable in all areas of life. This is kind of the character I'm trying to describe. So I write in the book, when I was young, I often heard stories of kings and fairy tales, tales of leaders who were both good and flawed. In particular, I was fascinated by those who stood out from the crowd due to their courageous decision-making and their unparalleled vision. This idea that there would be someone that you could look up to, someone who you would know would get the job done, who would kind of lead you through, and you could really rely on them. This is the kind of character I'm trying to describe. Now, I do admit as well in the book that these characters are often romanticized. They're not realistic. That's not the point of the book. The point is to kind of create an unrealistic but certainly inspirational character. We should be able to think, what would the king do in this situation? What would, whoever your role model is in life, what would they do? This character doesn't have any flaws. This is the whole point of the concept. Often a lot of role models in movies have some underlying flaw because they are human. Role models in stories often aren't perfect people simply because it's impossible normally to be perfect. But that's not very useful if your favorite character isn't a fully rounded individual. Then you might see that you yourself could perhaps uphold some standards and not others, whereas the whole point of this character is there are literally no flaws. I go on to kind of then describe what this good king has in terms of traits, like the fact that he is wise, that he understands the many challenges of life, that he is filled with solutions and enthusiasm to aid his people, ensuring that no one is left behind. He is strong in mind and body, confident in every situation, respected by all his people who reward them with their gratitude and support. They come to him for advice on all matters, since he is wise and interested in what they have to say. This leads all men to admire him and trust in his counsel. Yet he is not egotistical. Instead, he realizes how lucky he is to be alive and gives thanks every day while taking nothing for granted. He's fully aware of his privilege. He does his best in all things, not only for himself but also for his people. He knows not weakness and always finds a way, no matter how challenging the obstacle, thus being always optimistic, brave, and trusting in his ability. Daily he trains, his mind and his body. They are in a constant state of improvement. He sets a great example to his people who eagerly follow his lead. When they stray from their path, he supports them to return to the best that they can be. Since he's a leader of a great tribe, he understands the weight of the position he holds. All eyes are on him, and he knows it. He never shows fear, doubt, or uncertainty in all that he does. He explains the great problems in society to his people and shows them the vices and the virtues. People from all over the kingdom come to him for advice on the most challenging of topics, and all leave with a smile on their face and a spring in their step. His words diffuse the deepest of conflicts while feeding the sparks of camaraderie and brotherhood. In his presence, fools turn into wise men, and enemies turn into the best of friends. He is a man of great ability, yet he is conscious of where he can improve. He is not perfect and understands this. This helps him to remain humble and grateful for every moment, enjoying the twists and turns of life. He understands that he cannot control everything in the world. He cannot control how he or other people may feel at any given moment, but he can control how he acts. He's determined to always do the right thing for him and his people. It is the purpose of his life. No task is too great, no problem too small. He will come true. He is reliable, trustworthy, and a credit to the human race and all its accomplishments. He is a protector and teacher, but most importantly, he is a good and inspiring leader who everyone looks up to and respects. From listening to the description of the Good King, it should be clear that this is a character who can't do any wrong and is, I suppose, perhaps unrealistically capable of solving every crisis and every solution. But if anything in history has kind of shown us, there is always a possible way out. There's always some form of compromise that people can be happy with. It just takes our creativity and our patience to figure these things out. And that's why I think it is important to have this kind of inner belief that you can indeed solve unsolvable crises. This is the idea of the character. Now, the next half chapter is a blue-lined chapter, which, if you remember from maybe the first video in this series, explains how this concept can be practically applied to ourselves. So I write, in this volume, becoming a king doesn't mean you get a crown, riches, and power over people. What it means is becoming a king over your own life. You complete power over your actions, decisions, and thus your existence to the highest level possible of any human. So the idea is that you have power over your actions. Obviously, we can put ourselves in positions where we are compromised by external factors. Like, if I become a nicotine addict, I no longer have complete power over my actions because I'm driven to obviously serve the addiction. So someone who is an addict to something unhealthy like this, like nicotine, drugs, or anything else, is to a large degree is going to find it much harder to be in complete control of their actions, and therefore it's going to be much harder to be like the Good King because you're a slave to a substance. When you are a king, the way you think is the key to becoming your own master. So basically, to become a king, the way you think is mindset basically is the root to this. Many people will never reach this stage as they are trapped by their negative mindsets inherited from their poor decision making. This volume aims to gather and share information that can help us to become better as people. In my opinion, there's 3 steps now. Obviously, this is me trying to summarize the whole thing, but basically in 3 steps, if you take anything away from this video, you need to first develop a strong and positive mindset. Then you need to develop a healthy and prosperous body and maintain it. And then you need to live a life where you lead by example and thus share your knowledge to those who need it most. So you don't tell people what to do, but by leading by example, by just doing your own thing and doing it well, you will indirectly, as proof of concept, as proof of fundamentals, share your knowledge. And if people ask you for help or for advice, you can naturally share it. But I wouldn't go around telling people how to live if they don't ask for it. You can always, like, if you see someone who's struggling, you can try your best to help them, but it's not your job as opposed to cater for the entire world. But certainly is perhaps your duty to lead by example. So I'll go into the different steps in a bit more detail. So step 1 is the core reason why I wrote this book. So too often people are adrift in life without a solid direction or purpose. So this is talking about mindset and positive, as opposed all-rounded positivity. Strong and positive mindset at the end of the day. A strong sense of being in your mission, and a strong sense of right, just of being right in your path. And this is something that I perhaps could be better in. Like, there's times where you know there's something that you perhaps should or shouldn't say, and you mightn't do it, even though you know from your principles it's something you should do. Or maybe sometimes you say if a few things too many, and you kind of think back on it, and you think, oh wow, I would really like to be a person who wouldn't have said this particular thing. Or I like to be a person who would be able to stick to my goals this much stronger, stick to my values, stick to my principles. So it's this kind of strong sense of direction, this strong sense of knowing what you're about, that I think is really amazing, and I would love to develop a much stronger sense of this. Such a state, although not necessarily detrimental, now this song about if you are directionless and purposeless, can lead to a serious risk of complacency and unintended deterioration. Deterioration, I mean kind of from a health point of view as much as a mindset point of view. All over the world, all over the first world, we read headlines pronouncing the rise of illness associated with a lack of personal control, including examples like obesity. In the USA, over 70% of people are now considered to be overweight. And I have a reference to this stat, but you'll see it if you type in the internet, you'll find it quite quickly. Did these people become unwell to a self-harming mindset, or is it more to do with a lack of clarity and direction? The author believes it is the latter. If we possess the relevant information and combine it with a sense of understanding in the form of a healthy mindset, then there's no reason why anyone should fall into deterioration or worse. A strong, positive and capable mindset is crucial to becoming a king within your own life. Now, this line where I say, is it your fault for becoming obese, or is it just the fact that you were never really educated properly on... Not educated properly, because everybody knows if you eat bad food, you're going to become unwell. But it's this idea that you need to know that your actions really do have consequences, and that you need to be this needs to be reinforced from a young age, that things that you choose to do, your actions, your decision making does have consequences if things go wrong. People here are often tempted to blame advertising and big companies on the obesity crisis, but nobody forces you to buy the wrong kind of food. There is no law that says you must eat fast food. You can literally go into any other shop and buy decent, high quality produce that is healthy. So just to blame advertising and companies for this, I think is it's just pushing away responsibility that you, your parents, your family are technically accountable for at the end of the day. So by developing this kind of idea that you can be better and you can do well is kind of the first step in developing this positive mindset. Once you're conscious and aware of the idea that it is possible to be better in these things, it is possible to be operating at a high level, that's the first step. Then you need to educate yourself on what that level is and what the route to getting to that place is. And then you need commitment and determination to see it out. So step 2 is, so we've had mindset, and now we've had kind of this move from mindset to kind of just health. So I think health, it's easier to be happier and have a positive mindset when you're healthier, because your hormones and your chemicals in your body are more in balance. So it just becomes by default easier. Step 2 is the critical foundation to all we do in life. Without a body that can function at a natural level, we fall into a myriad of problems. People with unhealthy bodies are quicker to develop lazy and unhealthy thoughts. This is kind of a generalization, but it's perfectly true. If you are overweight, you're not going to want to do exercise. This is a very basic correlation. People who have worked hard and sacrificed in certain areas to maintain a healthy and capable body have got a much better balance of hormones and chemicals within themselves. This means that they will be happier and more optimistic, allowing them to achieve and retain the best of mindsets much easier. Therefore, it is a critical step. Another reason why a healthy body is a priority is that a positive mindset is a byproduct of being in a healthy state, like I said earlier. It could be argued that developing a healthy body should be the first and foremost priority, and yes, in a sense this is true, but it is easier to achieve once we've improved our mindset. So, like, the idea that you could become healthy first while still having a negative mindset is, to a degree, flawed, because you can go on a diet where you lose a lot of fat, you reach your target weight, and then you decide, okay, now I can relax, and you go right back to where you were. So if you don't have this kind of long-term marathon mindset on this, kind of like a life default mindset, like the idea this is the way you're going to live forever, it isn't just for the diet period, then what's the point of even doing the diet to a large degree? You know, you really need to be thinking about this long term. This book will explore some of the key regions that aid us in achieving and maintaining high standards of health. Then step 3 finally is about leading by example. Once we have reached a certain level along our journey to becoming better and more rounded people, an opportunity arrives where we are qualified to help others who may be struggling with certain problems that we ourselves may have overcome. To reach a state of accomplishment in terms of health and mindset is amazing, but to help others to get a step closer to achieving the same is even better. Once we have learned the fundamentals of living a good life, it is incumbent on us to look out for our friends and family and gently encourage them to also improve by leading through example. With the right mindset, we can be the leaders of our people, but first we must be able to lead ourselves in all areas of life. So that's basically that chapter more or less explained. There isn't much more to talk about there. It's just kind of, I suppose, describing again the 3 pillars, the 2 core pillars anyway, and then kind of an extra pillar on top of the channel of the book. This idea that you need to have your mindset in the right place, then get your health up, and then kind of live a life of living the life you want to live, with high morals, high values, high energy, doing the things you want, enjoying yourself, going on adventure, living it. And then, you know, by living this great life, once you have everything else in place, you're living and leading by example. I think this is very important, especially if you have a family, if you have people who are dependent on you, if you're responsible for anybody. Leading by example in all that you do. There isn't really ever a moment where you can not lead by example, especially if you have this responsibility. Otherwise people will see weakness in you, but you yourself will kind of drop your own standards, and it's really important for you to maintain this kind of consistency, in my opinion. I would love to be in a place where I have this kind of consistency, and I think over time I will develop it. It's definitely a goal of mine. So yeah, that's basically this chapter completely talked about. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.
Get your copy of The Royal Mindset by using the link below.